The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
All right, cool. So we are here on the My Backstory podcast. I'm here with Kevin Hines. I am super excited about this episode. Kevin has a foundation called the Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation. So, Kevin, I want you to, if you don't mind, give a brief introduction of who you are, what the foundation's all about, and a little bit about your story, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast.
Absolutely. My name is Kevin Hines. I spent the first 34 years of my life in San Francisco, California. I now live in Atlanta with my lovely wife, Margaret. In the year 2000, I attempted to take my life by way of jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, a way that is 99% fatal. I nearly died. I broke my back in 3 places, shattered 3 vertebrae. I was saved in the water by a sea lion. A sea lion came to my aid, bumped me up into the Coast Guard border ride behind me. The only reason I get to be here today is because of that creature. And I went through a massive back surgery to replace my shattered vertebrae with titanium. On that day, I had missed severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. It was a rough go at it for a long time. But in 2001, only 7 months after my attempt, I was asked to go speak about my experience to the very grade school that I attended as a kid, St. Cecilia's. I was asked to talk to 120 7th and 8th grade kids about what I'd been through. Now, I was still wearing a back brace, still walking with a cane. I was embarrassed of what I did. I didn't want to share with anybody. I had no intentions of sharing my story. And one of the chaplain, the Franciscan friar of the hospital I had been in when I was recovering physically, and he was also the chaplain of the psych ward I was in before that. After that, he came into my room one day and said, "Kevin, one day you should talk about this." And I remember looking at him going like, "Hey, buddy, what are you talking about? What do you mean?" I literally said to this Franciscan friar, about what to who. I didn't understand. And he said, "You'll see." And every day Franciscan friar, Brother George Cherry, would come into my room, and every day he would say, "Kid, when you get better, you ought to talk about this." And every single day I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever, buddy, sure, okay." And the last day he comes in, he goes, "Kid, I expect you to talk about this." And he left. And that was the last day of my admittance. So I leave the hospital and I go, and my dad takes me to church a few weeks later, the same church I'd grown up in, that school that I talked to you about, St. Cecilia's Church and School. And I'm coming out of the service, and Father Michael Harriman comes out, and he goes, "Kevin, how would you like to share your experience to our 7th and 8th grade class this Good Friday?" And I remember looking the priest in the eye and saying, "Father, I don't have a speech, and I wouldn't know what to say." And that's when my dad shoved me forward and goes, "He'll do it." I remember I looked back like, "What are you doing, Dad?" And he goes, "You'll do it. We need closure." And when Pat Hines says things twice, you do it. That's just that simple. He's 6'1" and I'm not. So, you know what I mean? And so I go on Good Friday. First of all, I wrote a speech till 3 a.m. on Good Friday. Not mentally healthy at all. And my dad edited it that morning at 7 a.m. We were to the church at 9 a.m. And I'm looking out into this small audience of 120 7th and 8th grade kids sitting just where I used to sit, in their cross-legged position, in their Catholic uniforms, the same uniform I used to wear. And I'm terrified. I've got my back brace over my shirt. I've got my cane in my right hand, my speech in my left hand. It's 25 pages, 45 minutes to read aloud. And I remember thinking to myself, who is this going to help? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? And then I dropped page by page to the floor with a flick of a thumb. I dropped the last page to the floor, thinking to myself, this helped nobody. 8 hands immediately go up. The first question was totally inappropriate, and the nun yelled out, "Don't answer that." And I said I wasn't going to. But the next 7 questions were intuitive and intelligent and powerful and moving. And you could tell there was an impact had. And it blew my mind. And then 2 weeks later, the priest called me back to the rectory and said, I've got something for you. Can you come meet me at school? And I said, Father, I'll be right there. So I hobbled up 2 miles up a big hill with my cane and my back brace, sweating profusely through everything. I was soaking wet when I got there. It was an odd, hot day in San Francisco. And I get there and I sit down, I take a breath, I take my inhaler for my asthma, and the priest goes, here. And he hands me a manila envelope filled with 120 letters from 120 kids. Now, I'm no fool. They were mandated to write those letters, but what they weren't given is any parameters on what they could write. So these young minds wrote to their heart's content about their appreciation for my presentation and about their thoughts about the presentation. And 6 of those kids were actively suicidal. And we got them the help they needed, and they're alive today. And it was when my father read those letters, he said, we have to do this however, wherever, and whenever possible. And we would go on this journey with my father and I, my wife and I, and now the Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation. And that foundation was founded to give people a voice. It was founded to help people recognize their true value, that they're worthy, and that suicide is never the solution to the problem. It is, in fact, the problem. And that's why I wear this shirt, Be Here Tomorrow, and we sell this Be Here Tomorrow merch on our website because, 100% of these proceeds go to the American Association of Suicidology. This is all about finding cutting-edge research to eliminate suicide from our state of being and help people stay here, help people, as I say, be here tomorrow and every day after that.
What got you to that place, Kevin? Like when you got to that place where, you were at your wit's end, where it's like, you know what, man, like I'm just gonna go through with it. I'm done being here. Like what was the breaking point for you?
It really was the auditory and visual hallucinations I've been having for so long. I am diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features. And I can tell you that I saw things that no human being should see that are so terrifying, they'll keep you up at night, and they do for me, even today. Seeing and hearing things like Death himself hover through my window with his staff and blade, his scythe in his right bony arm, reach out his other bony hand, turn it upside down, his eyes light to fire, and his skulled face as he says, come home with me, Monday through Monday, but I didn't tell anybody. Seeing dragons and pterodactyls flying above my ceiling and my ceiling open up to the sky above me, seeing miniature hotels in my room with thousands of occupants out the windows yelling at me. Like the things that I've dealt with mentally have been incapacitating. And up until the point of my attempt, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't bear the brunt and the weight of my depression any longer. My manic highs would skyrocket. I'd fly so high, I thought I could do things that were impossible. And thus I would come crashing down into a darkened abyss of depression that I felt like I couldn't get out of. And these things would often happen simultaneously, which was so confusing. The paranoid delusions that I experienced on a regular basis were mind-numbing. Feeling like people are always out to get you, trying to hurt you and trying to kill you. It's debilitating.
Did anybody know, did your parents know? Did anybody know, what you were going through internally, or were you keeping it all inside?
Nobody knew the extent of it. Nobody knew. I kept all of this very well hidden. Somehow us human beings going through lethal emotional pain are able to keep a straight face sometimes when we don't want people to know what we're really battling. And that's the sad part of our nation's reality and the world really, is that we keep our mind troubles to ourselves. If it's brain pain, we don't tell anybody about it for fear of retaliation, for fear of shame and stigma and discrimination, for fear of marginalization. And we keep it to ourselves because we feel like our bosses won't understand, our employees won't grasp what we're going through and won't give us the time off and will fire us. We'll be furloughed from our jobs. I mean, look at, and now in COVID with, over 40% of the population losing their jobs, it's all of this can be too much to bear. And for me, on the day of my attempt, I couldn't deal with it anymore. I was so gone. I felt I had to die, but I was wrong. I was wrong. I was worthy. I had value. Suicide didn't have to be the option. I could have said to someone, I need help now. And eventually someone would help me. I couldn't see it. Couldn't see it.
It's crazy, man. I want you to, if you don't mind, like when you were on that ledge, man, you were getting ready to jump off. What was going through your mind? I mean, I listened to a little bit of your story, and I don't want to steal it away from the people who haven't heard it. So if you don't mind resharing, like kind of just a little bit of like what was going through your head and the minute you jumped and kind of just a little bit into that, and then we'll get into the recovery of it all.
No, I don't mind at all. I never got on the ledge to be talked back. I catapulted myself over the rail. There was nobody would have been able to save me.
Right.
But it was the millisecond that my hands left that rail and my legs cleared it that I had an instantaneous regret for my actions and the 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late.
Wow.
People all over the world who have survived their suicide attempts recount the same instantaneous regret that I do. It's instinctual. Why? Because you recognize in that moment that your thoughts did not have to become your actions. You recognize in that moment that your thoughts did not have to own, rule, and define what you do next. Your thoughts are just your thoughts. Suicide is a way of thinking. If you can delete the thought over time, you can survive the pain. I didn't know that. I wish I knew that back then. And part that for anybody listening now, if you're going through it, consider that fact. Your thoughts don't have to become your actions. You have to go to someone and say, I need help now. 4 simple but very effective words. You might not have the first person you come across be the right person to talk to. So keep searching until you find someone willing to empathize with your pain, because there will be someone. I live with chronic and regular thoughts of ending my life and planning, but I've never died that way because every time I'm suicidal today, I turn to someone and say those 4 simple but effective words. I make sure that I build a personal protector network around me of individuals who know my treatment plan so that when I'm unwell mentally, when I'm not self-aware, they've got my back. You've got to do this for yourself. I've actually drawn it out for you in my 10-step plan, The Art of Wellness, which is at youtube.com/Kevin Hines. If you go to the playlist, The Art of Wellness, or you can just type in The Art of Wellness, Kevin Hines into YouTube, you'll find it. It is a 10-step guide, 12 videos, 3 to 5 minutes each, easily digestible on how you can better balance your brain, mind, behavior, mental well-being right now, today. And people as far as Peru, Africa, China, and Japan are saying that it's dramatically improving their mental health in 6 to 9 months if you put in the work. I put in the work a long time ago. That's why I'm still here today.
It's awesome, man. What do you think are some of the reasons that we are seeing more suicides, it seems like, now than in the past? And I'm going to speak from the veteran community because I am a veteran, and it seems like, I don't know if it's, just more awareness on it or access to information, but it seems like people are willing to go that to the extreme of actually going through committing suicide now more than ever. And that's kind of why I started it, or it is why I did this whole podcast series on mental health, was because a buddy that I had on the podcast unfortunately succumbed to his demons 2 months ago. And I think a lot of it had to do with this pandemic, and being shut in, where like he was going around speaking to all these other veterans and helping so many people. And when that got taken away from him, I felt like he got, stuck. Like he felt like he was alone with his own thoughts. What are some things in your mind that you think that people can do to like help themselves so we can stop some of these like senseless suicides?
I think one of the biggest things we can do is be the person. If we're the one that is doing well mentally, we must ask all the people in our lives if they're doing well mentally. What are you going through? I'm not just blowing this up your, whatever. I'm asking you directly, how are you doing? I want to know the real answer. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. What are you really going through, and how can I be of service? How can I help? Because when we look at people who are in lethal emotional pain and we walk by them without asking them that question, are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? And really wait for the honest to God true answer. You never know how much of a shift you could have in someone's life if you ask those direct questions because you care. Yeah. Sometimes it's all about just showing up, Josh, we don't always have to have the answers. Sometimes we just have to show up and be there for that person, be there light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like, for me, I talked to somebody else about this the other day, how it feels almost, there's a sense of like pressure, when you're like in a space of like helping people, where sometimes you have to like check, like, do you ever feel the need to like kind of pull back a little bit to like make sure that you're okay before you're helping other people?
Oh, all the time, all the time. And my wife's a good checker on that. You know, she makes sure I'm safe with that.
Right.
I'm lucky to have her in that way, in every way. But I definitely check myself when I'm going through it. And if I'm going through it in the sense that I can't go do my job, then I'll shut down what I'm doing just to make sure I'm mentally safe.
Right. What are some steps? I mean, I know you have the 10-step process, but what are some things that you do when you find yourself now today in a dark place? What are some things that you do immediately to get yourself out of it?
One of my go-tos, and my wife will be attest to this, is she'll just say, when I'm in a funk or depression, she'll say, drop and give me 50. So drop and give me 50 push-ups right now. Rush those endorphins to the brain for that immediate release of feeling better. Go do 23 minutes now of rigorous exercise, because 23 minutes of rigorous exercise leads to 12 hours of better mood. You know, that's something that if we're physically capable, we can do right now. If we're not physically capable, one of the things I highly recommend is resonance breathing. In through your nose for 4 seconds, out through your pursed lips like a whistle but no sound, 8 seconds. Repeat that 30 to 40 to 50 times. And take your time in doing it, because it's going to bring your body back down to a calm. And whatever you are going through, you're going to have more control over it if you do that resonance breathing. Those are 2 things you can do right now, depending on whether you are physically capable or not.
Right. What was the recovery like for you when you got to that place and you realized that you had instant regret of the decision to make a permanent decision for a temporary problem? What was that recovery like for you when you realized like this is it, you know what I mean? And then you survived. Like, what was going through your head, and how did you what was your plan for the next couple months?
It wasn't easy. It was, I was in a bracing structure in the hospital where they were, 10.5-hour back surgery to replace my shattered vertebrae with titanium. I have a cylindrical metal cage, 4 pins the size of my index finger, a metal plate the size of my palm on my left side, and that's the only reason I can stand, walk, and run. I went from a wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane, and then right into my first psych ward. The physical healing only took about 4.5 weeks, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
The 6 more months in the back brace with the cane. But really, great deal of hard work there, great deal of hard work in the psych ward, but I would be in 9 psych ward stays in the next 14 years, the most recent of which was last year. So I'm by no means recovered. I'm in recovery every day. And it's a matter of, there's a few things going on here. It's a matter of built-in resilience, remade willpower, a great deal of hard work. My father used to say, Kevin, hard work is nothing good ever came without it. And I agree with that. And a dedication and a commitment to life. When these thoughts creep in, they are dangerous and they are hardcore, and it is hard to cope. But I am willing, able, and ready to always use my voice to say, I need help now. And I think if more people could follow that mantra, more people would be alive. I think we have a lack of resilience in this country today and around the world. I think we have a lack of resilience and I think we, on the converse side of that lack of resilience is a complete lack of empathy by so many other people who see the people who are sick and suffering. And if we could build up our children to be more resilient than they are today, that would be one thing. But if we could build up the other half of people who are doing well and their empathy factor, then we could mold the two, and people would be in a much better shape and place to survive suicidal ideation than ever before.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you said that, because I know, for myself personally, I've had 6 back surgeries. I have 2 rods, 10 screws, the whole deal, and suffered really bad, with opiate addiction, all kinds of other things that I was going through. And recovering from that, it took a lot of resilience. It took a lot of grit. It took a lot of when I quit all my medications, I did the last back surgery with no medication. And I feel like what's kept me alive and what's kept me in the fight has been that resilience, has been that grittiness. But there's also been, for a large part of my life, was a lack of empathy. I was unwilling to listen to other people. It was I was just in my own head, my own space. But lately I've been opening up and being like, man, I got to meet people where they are. And I love something you said earlier, is that, you said that you were in a psych ward as early as last year, but here you are still helping people. And I think for me, I always had this misconception that I couldn't help people if I wasn't 100%. I felt like I needed to be perfect in every way, because who am I to talk to anybody if I don't have all my ducks in a row? And I had a therapist tell me, she said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with being a work in progress and still helping people while you're a work in progress yourself.
Hell yeah, man.
And yeah, so I think it's amazing that you're still on this journey to help other people while you're still working on yourself at the same time.
I mean, listen, like about almost 3 years ago now, I came down with second-degree burns across my entire body from feet to toe, or head to toe. And they were from, one of them was the burns, the lesions and the bloody blisters, and the second-degree burns came from one of the medications I was on at the time, causing me to be on the tipping point of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which, if you don't know, your insides boil outside of you. It's a horrific condition caused by meds. It can be caused by any medication, not just psych meds.
Right.
But this was honed into one particular medication. But in order for them to decipher which medication it was, they had to take me off all meds simultaneously in 24 hours. Now, if you don't know, being taken off of fast-acting medications in 24 hours without properly titrating down is very dangerous and dangerous for your mind. It set me onto a 48-hour hallucinatory withdrawal-based psychosis, where I saw and heard things for 48 hours straight. My wife sat up with me in bed and dealt with this thing. She stayed awake while I was in and out of consciousness. It was bananas. I saw the answers to the universe, man. I saw Jesus. I saw the 40 busts of Jesus in every ethnicity you could imagine. I saw the green, the white, and the gray alien. I saw the Aboriginals that brought them, and it just went on like this. I saw Gandhi, Buddha, and the King of Bhutan. And they're all talking to me. And then I saw the Aurora Borealis in my room for the last 24 hours. It was bananas, all because they had to remove me of those meds or I would die. And so when they put me back on medications, I was in so much physical pain from these burns that I went off. I didn't tell anybody and went back off the medication about 6 months later and caused myself to go in. Because of the combination of those two things, I went into almost a 1.5 year long manic spiral that was out of this world. And in that hypermania, my doctors said that it caused akin to brain damage. And so I had to heal all of that, but I'm still going out doing the work. I'm just trying to maintain, because I was in so much physical pain that sitting around was not an option.
Right.
You know, I had to be active. I had to be productive. I had to do good work for some people. That sadly, you know, there were some people in the field that didn't understand and that were angry with my choice to continue to do the work, because they said I was too vigilant or too militant in my speeches and too aggressive. And that's not me as a person. That's not my background. That's not who I am. I'm a very calm, cool, collected guy when I'm doing really well and stable mentally, and I'm not a person that is forceful or aggressive, but I was with that mania. And if you don't understand a manic episode, you have to think of it like a person normally talking at this speed who is rapidly talking at a pace you can't comprehend, where you don't know what they're saying. And they're not just rapidly speaking, but they're talking about things that are impossible. When I had the height of my mania, I was in New York, and I crossed 3 state lines vlogging with people I didn't know, with stories that didn't exist. You know, it was all in my head. And you know, I could have been robbed. I could have been killed. I could have been, you know, and here I was scaring my wife half to death. Her whole family's in New York on Thanksgiving, and I'm running around with a camera filming people that don't know me and I don't know, who could have easily been a threat. You know, it just, you do things that are out of control. I remember when I was in San Jose State University, I took the entire football team, the guys I knew from the football team, and said, let's go to the mall. I'm dropping my $50,000 trust fund on you guys. And I did.
Wow.
I went to the mall and I spent $50,000 in one day on people I didn't even know.
Wow.
Yeah.
All in a manic state?
All in a manic state. And to say the least, my father was not very happy about that.
Yeah, well, I bet. You know, it's funny. This is the second time ever that I've really started to understand, you know, bipolar and like kind of like how it presents itself. I had another gentleman on this podcast series that I think it's bipolar. I guess it would be type 1. I'm not sure if it's type 1 or type 2, but they told him when he was 25 that there's a potential that his brain could change, or the chemistry of his brain could change when he's 25, and he could potentially outgrow his bipolar disorder. And he said that gave him a sense of hope and a sense of like, a better future for himself, because he was going from, like you were explaining, these highs where he felt like Superman to where he just was trying to stay alive, like prevent himself from killing himself. And it was like such a crazy, like polar opposites, and then hearing you explain it, it's like, dude, I can't imagine being under that kind of like mental like torment, and so I can understand now, I can empathize with where you were when you decided to take that jump, because it's like, that's not living for a lot of people, you know what I mean? But to see what you're doing now and helping other people is completely commendable. Do you think that social media, in terms of social media, do you think that that's a +1 for mental health, or do you think it's a detriment to our mental health?
I think it's both. I think that, the facts are that social media is not necessarily the bad guy here. It's how some people use social media that is the bad guy. And you can make that argument that there's no study that's found a visceral connection between social media and mental health. But there are studies that show that the way people funnel messages to minors, kids, or even adults through certain social media platforms can be dangerous.
Right.
So it's not the social media itself, because there's a lot of apps and social media platforms that are doing good work in mental health and suicide prevention even. And there's technologies like the crisis text line that's doing great work to help keep people alive. And it's very successful. That's a social media platform, basically. That's an online digital platform. We could do a lot better with how we, or how the social media companies monitor suicidal crisis or mental health crisis and keep people safe from bad material.
Right.
And I think that the one thing I hate about social media is how easy it is to verbally hurt somebody else with words. I think that is the biggest, I think one of the biggest mistakes social media made was to allow the comment section. I'm sorry. And I'm talking about, this is a person who gets hundreds of thousands of comments a year from people who say that the work we do saves lives. That's awesome. But that same funnel is going to a 16-year-old girl by all these other 16-year-old girls in her class that treat her like garbage and tell her how worthless she is, and then she goes and she ends her life.
Yep.
I would rather not have my comments so she didn't have to have hers, and so she would still be here.
It's a great point. What would you say is your biggest passion and purpose in life now, where you sit?
My biggest passion and purpose, and I'm going to be selfish here, is to be a good husband to my wife. That's my biggest passion. My second biggest passion and purpose is to share a message with the world that suicide is never the answer, it is the problem. And that they should be here tomorrow and every day after that, that they're valued, that they're loved, and that if nobody else says it today, we love them, we want them to stay. That's my biggest mission. I want people to know that they don't have to turn to this horrific option.
Right. I love it, man. Can you talk about your foundation a little bit? Like what you guys do, what the main mission statement is, and
sure,
kind of like how you can help people, or how they can help you even.
Yeah, no, the mission statement is to instill hope in people who have none, and help their families and friends, aid them to keep them safe at all times. And how we do that is we give away free therapy to kids who otherwise couldn't afford it through teletherapy. And we also help fund cutting-edge research for suicide prevention from the American Association of Suicidology. And some of the funds also go toward an AAS, and that's the American Association of Suicidology, Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation, and Directing Change. And that's where we we garner kids from all across the country who create these films, short 30-second, 1-minute films, suicide prevention PSAs, and they're judged and they're awarded just like they'd be awarded like if they made a film for the Oscars. It's a little less fantastic and splashy, but it certainly is important, and it's moving. And to see these kids make these films and be creative is just amazing. And to see them, those films, get out on the air or get on TV or get online, and then you see the comments that say they saved a life, you can't be more happy than that. It's something that just blows your mind every time and makes you feel like you're making an impact.
Yeah, for sure.
People can go to kmhinesfoundation.org. That's KM as in Mary, HINESFOUNDATION.org. And you can go to the donate page and help us help other people find that light at the end of the tunnel so they can be here tomorrow.
I love it, man. Is there any other modalities that you've looked into to help other people? I mean, I've had a couple of people on here that they've talked about, psychedelic medication or psychedelic, treatment for mental health. Is this anything that you've looked into or anything that you support or don't?
Yeah, no, I'm studying right now functional medicine personally as a personal endeavor. Reading books like from Dr. Cole and Dr. Mark Hyman about inflammation in the body and how to reduce inflammation and reduce mental health crisis and risk and illness. I'm reading Max Lugavere's Genius Foods to do the same. Your gut to brain health ratio is really important. Your gut membranes are tied directly to your brain. If your gut health is poor, your brain health is poor. And in order to fix that, you've got to do a lot of work on your diet and the way you eat and making sure to eat clean. So I'm working on that right now, working on getting back in physical shape. This COVID weight has come on, so I've got to get that off. But I'm getting back into the game and working hard to balance my brain health through different means.
Awesome. And if you don't mind, man, would you mind plugging your Instagram and just what's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way for people to connect with me is just to go on youtube.com/Kevin Hines, or just go to YouTube and type in Kevin Hines, find the circle with my picture, press subscribe, hit the bell, and leave me a comment. I respond to most of my comments on that feed, if not all of them, on a daily basis. So I usually watch that one most. You can reach me at Kevin Hines Story on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Those are Instagram I stay pretty up to date with. So, yeah.
Well, I love it, man. Your story is absolutely incredible, man. And I'm so excited that I was able to have you on here to share it. And I'm confident that by you sharing your story, it's opening up the door for so many other people to end the taboo, end the stigma, and start talking about their stories to get help, to get the help that they need. So I appreciate you more than you know, brother. And thank you so much. Thank you, brother. I appreciate your helping me get the message out there. It means a lot. Yeah, for sure, bro. Thank you. All right, take care. All right, brother.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.